Welcome into the NASCAR Betting Preview Show as we get locked and loaded for the final race of the first round in the NASCAR playoffs. And it's none other than the fantastic, the one and only Bristol Night Race. We have best bets, prop plays, and much more NASCAR conversations for you and everyone else within the NASCAR betting community, only on the NASCAR Betting Preview Show. Let's get right into it. It's not just me. There he is, Phil, live from Bristol as we're here for the NASCAR Betting Preview Show. Appreciate everyone tuning in. The chat's going crazy. Sorry for the slight delay. Had to fix my hair up, make sure I looked all nice here. So as you guys can see, we are missing Ryan from Win the Race this weekend, or on the show rather, as he will be in Bristol for this weekend. He's, wishing he could be here with us tonight, but he did tell us to say anyone who will be in Bristol for the race and want to meet up with them and that community that's going down there, feel free to DM him. If you want to drink or anything like that, open to all and everyone hanging out there at Bristol. So that's really exciting to hear that we have boots on the ground for 2 consecutive weeks now with Ryan being at Bristol. I was at Watkins Glen this past weekend. Phil might go to Kansas. Who knows? We're still trying to push that one. But let's get to the chat here as well as we welcome you all into the NASCAR Betting Preview Show. Marcus saying first. That might be like 5 consecutive firsts for Marcus, and I really appreciate him for doing that. He's still thinking Christopher Bell's going to win it at Bristol, and the championship should be interesting to see. I think that's a good pick there. Brian in the chat, appreciate you, Brian. Hamlin, C. Bell, yep. Phil, oh yeah, Phil's in the chat, and Phil's here as well. Charles, hello. Big Ross, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. And Phil, as we continue to scroll through these comments here, how are you doing? How was your race in terms of the betting standpoint and everything like that from Watkins Glen last weekend?
Well, I'm doing great, Tino, and yeah, I appreciate everyone from jumping in the chat. I have FOMO this weekend. Everybody seems like they're going to Bristol. I saw Charles going to Bristol, Ryan on his way to Bristol, so I threw a little background in there to make me feel like I'm there in spirit. So my video quality a little bit down, but I'm in Bristol in my heart. So yeah, and last weekend, I mean, I know a lot of people were very happy with the Chris Buescher situation. I had a decent amount of units on Chevy, just Chevy as a manufacturer. So I was happy when one of those guys finally passed Buescher, and the end of the race obviously didn't work out. But thought it was really cool to see Buescher get that victory, and seemed like a lot of people in the NASCAR gambling community were cashing in on that. So I do like to see that when that happens. So, but real question is, Tino, how was your Sunday? Because you mentioned boots on the ground, back-to-back weekend. You were there. How was it?
Yeah, I was there. And it was awesome. Watkins Glen, my favorite track on the schedule. It's always a pleasure when I can go there. And when I was there, I had the opportunity to talk to Connor Zillage, talk to SVG, be running around the track, maybe playing a little video games with Mamba. So many awesome things that I was able to do in person as media covering the event. And it was, a lot of it that I do have to edit and get out there as well. So I've been working hard because a lot of those things, were really cool productions that we were able to make, and talking to the drivers, talking to the fans, running through the bus stop, being on the track, being just in person, experiencing the whole crowd there. Like you said, Phil, in terms of everyone cashing out on Buescher, I wasn't one of them, so that one did hurt a little bit, did bring the vibes down just a tad. But overall, there was an awesome, picture perfect race weekend. Had SVG, came in second, but it was a great time nonetheless. And I think, that's like the best part of going to a race, interacting with the fans, seeing everything, seeing all the people, and really just living it up, being immersed in the NASCAR community. And I'm excited, for Ryan and win the race guys and the community there. That's going to be at Bristol this week. I'll keep plugging it because I want everyone who may be tuning in, who may be going this weekend, to hang out with them, because I know he'd be saying the same thing here. So I think the biggest thing, though, from Watkins Glen was where the playoff picture looks now. I think this is a perfect segue to go to the next segment because, Phil, if you were to pick a driver that you're looking at in the playoff picture right now that surprises you based off of where they're at in the standings, who is it, and why is it Denny Hamlin?
That's who it is. Denny Hamlin, I think that this is a blueprint, or kind of the anti-blueprint, for crew chiefs and teams moving forward. Because that Atlanta race where they took their foot off the gas and basically said, like, I don't want to play, we're going to try to just, survive. It's really backfiring. They bank on the fact that they're really good at Watkins Glen. Well, guess what? That didn't happen. They were rough off the truck. Like, it's not like they got swept up in something. They were bad. And it's just a reminder to these teams, like, you can't rest on your laurels. And going into Bristol, they've dominated Bristol, but can we trust that they're going to be able to pull that together? And they find themselves below the cut line. It's really strange to see them do that. It's kind of mind boggling. So he is the biggest surprise, but how about yourself? Anybody else other than Denny surprising you where they're at, up or down too? There could be the positive.
I think I'll take this time to tip my cap to Austin Cindric. Third place in the NASCAR Cup Series playoff standings as we make it to the final race in the first round of the playoffs here. I mean, plus 43 to the good. I really don't want to jinx him because he's been having such a great performance thus far, and I don't think, like, plus 43 being third, which is technically second since Joey's already locked in, Joey Logano winning at Atlanta. Austin Cindric to me just looks really strong right now, and I'm very surprised. I did not expect to see him up there. The fact that they are that high, I think now, yep, Brian knows it. That Cindric 150-1 championship ticket. I love it. And that's what it's all about too, because anyone, we saw with Blaney, and obviously Blaney is better and more experienced, and I felt like had a lot more momentum going. But anything can happen in the playoffs. And if you just keep winning races, I mean, hey, Austin Cindric, or at least finishing within top 10, top 15, instead of, like, they're going out being aggressive. Denny Hamlin, for instance, didn't do that, finds himself in a hole. I think Austin Cindric used the opposite mentality for his favor, and I'm loving it. I'm loving what I'm seeing out of Austin Cindric. And it's also, like you said, Phil, insane to see what we are seeing from Denny Hamlin. I think I have a lot more thoughts about Denny heading into Bristol, which I'll get to later on in the show, because some of it, hey, maybe on my betting card. But aside from that, I think, that it's a perfect opportunity to look at these drivers, see which ones could potentially win at Bristol, and talk about that. But before we do that, let's get into rapid fire questions here.
Yeah. Sorry, I wanted to throw in this playoff picture segment. I'm sorry, I didn't tell you this beforehand. I wanted to have a quick conversation and also throw this out to the chat too, because I think when we're on these cut line races, that's where I love looking at the futures market. And if we're at all concerned about Denny Hamlin, the first place we can look to is the books. They are not. They still have him at plus 550, plus 600 to win the championship, minus 110 to make the final four. So they are very convinced that he's going to make it in and continue to grow from there. But the guy I wanted to ask about was Martin Truex Jr. I know that we've talked about Truex in a while. I've been talking about how he's been horrible, and we've been fading him in matchups, and not really his fan, but he's 40-1 right now to win the championship. And you compare that to Keselowski, who's like similar number. If either of those guys sneak in, I think Truex is the one that would be able to put something together, even though he's shown nothing since Kansas. But I love throwing a little sprinkle on guys who automatically, because they're on the cut line, get the longer odds. He's plus 500 to make the championship 4. I think that's my favorite of, any of these cut line bets, because if he can just find a way to survive in advance, then he's in the ball game to be able to pull something like that out. We've had success in the past doing this to guys, and Truex is where my mind is right now. I don't know, like, to you or the guys in the chat, like, is he just dead in the water? Like, will he be dead in the water after this race, or is there a chance that he survives and then all of a sudden you're sitting on a pretty nice ticket? Because if he does, those odds instantly go back down,
I am so glad you brought this up. So thank you, Phil, because I've been thinking about this ever since we left Watkins Glen, right? Okay, let's look at the 4 guys that are going to potentially be eliminated this round. We have Denny Hamlin -6, Brad Keselowski -12, MTJ -14, Harrison Burton -20. Let's say Burton and honestly Kez, let's say those 2 are out, just based off the picture right now. Then you have Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex Jr. filling those last 2 spots, like I said. I can see Denny Hamlin winning this race. So if Denny Hamlin wins, Ty Gibbs gets bumped out. Chase Briscoe gets bumped out. It's going to be either 2 of those drivers. So that being said, not much room for Truex to then advance. I think he may have to win this race in order to continue on. Like, if we feel so, and I think everyone in the chat, let me know, chat. Let me know if I'm wrong in thinking this. The majority of people are thinking Denny Hamlin is going to win this weekend. And obviously we'll get into bets, and everything like that. But the fact that he has past 2 wins here, going for a 3rd, the spot he's in this current championship playoff picture, I don't think Martin Truex Jr. in a head-to-head with Denny Hamlin could win. And I think that is where I'm only like a little iffy on Truex, because I love those odds. 40-1 right now is a great point too, because I think, but then you mentioned Denny Hamlin, he's still plus 500, plus 550. And I think that's where the difference lies. They think Denny Hamlin's going to go out and win this race. They don't think Truex in a head-to-head matchup could do so. Let's see what the chat's thinking here though. Big Ross had that one up for a minute, because that was a good one. It's been his weekly donation in the books, and honestly, me too. I did not want to hop on him at Watkins Glen. Did so because where he started, and ultimately didn't pan out at the end. Let's see, Brian saying MTJ was good in the spring, always performs when tires matter. That said, tires won't surprise anyone this weekend. Also, very good point. A lot of teams have data, preparation they can actually bring to this track based off the current tire compound. Let's see, Brian saying Truex is going to run up in the front. I think so too. And then I think Truex is a pro at sponsors events. I also a good point. So maybe this could be, Truex's time with it being Bass Pro sponsored. But no, I think that was a great point, Phil, because when I'm looking at this playoff picture, I think the only guy that can necessarily win out of those 6, maybe Denny Hamlin, but we've seen Briscoe too. But what do you got? What are you thinking?
I was just going to say, you're right to think that way. The caveat is for 2 races in a row now, we've seen big playoff drivers finish dead last. Larson and Blaney last week. So I don't think it's out of question that somebody runs into trouble. I mean, this is the Bristol Night Race. Somebody runs into trouble early, and then all of a sudden that changes the cut line strategy. So you may be right. Like, they're kind of fighting uphill right now and need to win the race because of the guys they're around. Like, I think they're surprised that if you had said to begin the playoffs, hey, you're going to be in the bottom 4 and you're fighting at Bristol, the guys you're fighting against you'd be shocked that it's Keselowski, that it's Gibbs, that it's Hamlin. You've been much more comfortable if it was Briscoe, Suarez, Cindric, but no, this is who you're going up against. So I think their original plan to start the race is going to be, all right, well, we probably have to be up front. We probably have to win, but let's see how the race plays out. There's going to be some read and react situations here because, like I said, 2 races in a row in the playoffs, dead last playoff driver. There's going to be someone that is going to run into trouble, and that's going to change the cut line a little bit. So we'll see. But I do think your point is valid to start the race, that they have to be thinking they're going to need to win the race to advance. So, and I do think that's too tall of an order for Truex right now. But
yes,
I love these future bets though.
No, me too. Yeah, well, and that's where everything all ties into with our analysis and this conversation and what the chat's saying as well. Let's see what S. Cole's saying here. Nobody in the top 12 wants Hamlin to advance. I could agree with that because he's a championship threat. You look at Brad. I mean, Brad could be, Truex could be, but at the same time, it's like could be, and Denny Hamlin is a clear favorite. And then wouldn't be surprised if he gets raced harder. Oh wow, honestly, yeah. Then previous first round cutoffs that could lead. See, that's my thing too with Denny Hamlin. Staying on this a little bit longer because I think it's worth it. Honestly, all in favor of playoff picture become just kind of moving over rapid fire. Let me know in the chat because I just love where we're at right now. And I don't have them at that good of rapid fire questions also. But my point I wanted to bring up too was I think the fact that Briscoe, Ty Gibbs, Denny Hamlin, Brad Keselowski, and MTJ. No disrespect to Harrison Burton. Just don't think he could win at Bristol. Those 5 drivers, I just feel like with them having to go out and win, like potentially, because all of them need to be in that mindset. You can't go into this race in being below the cut line or +6 or above it, which is both Gibbs and Briscoe, and not feel like you have to win this race. And I think that's where we're going to see guys be aggressive. One thing I wanted to bring up about last week at Watkins Glen, like I said, my favorite racetrack. Like I said, favorite road course. And I was so excited for this to be Watkins Glen in the playoffs. But you know what? It kind of disappointed me because it was Watkins Glen in the playoffs, middle of a round in which all of the playoff drivers just went and raced for points. And then at the end, when it mattered most for the win, it didn't, none of them cared. And it was all drivers. We saw Corey LaJoy. We saw Carson Hocevar. I mean, guys, like that was a race that I told all my friends, oh, this is going to be so, people that don't watch NASCAR, this is going to be such an exciting race. And don't get me wrong, it was. I'm happy for Briscoe. None of this is like against that. But the fact that it was Watkins Glen in the playoffs and we didn't see playoff drivers going out for the win, I think that is something that hurt me, and I hurt what I wanted to see, and I think that is something we will see at Bristol this weekend based off of all the playoff drivers and everything like that.
Yeah, I think all of that is valid, and it's just setting us up for a really fun Saturday night. So we'll I think we've covered the playoff picture, and we're square ready to go.
Let's go. Appreciate everyone in the chat continuing on. Miami Mike, really hope they race for the win this week. Me too. I mean, if you're talking about playoffs, right? I want to see playoff drivers race for the win. I don't want to see you racing for points. This is short track racing. So, all right, I do have a couple rapid fire questions for you here, Phil, and I'll throw them over to myself as well to see what we got cooking. So, first rapid fire question for you here: does the Bristol Night Race go to overtime?
Yes, I do. The only reason I say that is because I've been tracking that bet. And it's been hitting left and right, and it was up to like plus 350, plus 325 for a while on standard tracks. And now it's down to like plus 200. I'm pretty sure that's what it is going into Bristol, which is just a telltale sign. Like, and I also feel like if it's looking like somebody's running away with it, we might have a Walmart sign or something out on the track. We might have somebody from NASCAR like unhooking some advertisements to make sure, because it just seems like every single race is overtime. And why would they not want, from a NASCAR perspective, the crazy finish at one of the most prestigious tracks? Now, I don't know what happened in the spring. I don't remember. But the more recent races in the last like month or so, it's been overtime.
Yeah,
Charles I think said he'll throw a cucumber.
Yeah, I thought that one up in there. No, and we've seen stuff like that. There's literally been cucumbers thrown onto the track at Bristol before. So Charles, if you do film it, send it in so we can see it. But that's a great point, because I think am I wrong here, or have the last 5 races in this NASCAR season been in overtime?
I think
Right?
they
Like,
have. I think
yeah.
they have. Yeah.
If
Like a
not
month, like a
overtime,
month
then
straight.
late. Yes. If not overtime, then a late race, like 2 lap to go, which is essentially overtime anyways because it's a green white checkered.
Mhm.
Yeah. Throw a cucumber, tire debris. Like, it's gonna be stuff like this that puts it on overtime again, and it's tough to like. I love NASCAR overtime, but at the same time, having it back to back to back like that is tough. But where it isn't necessarily tough is when we could bet on it. And if it is still plus 250, like Brian's saying, that's something I'm definitely putting down on because of everything we've seen. And also with it being the Bristol Night Race and with these amount of drivers that could potentially, I feel like last year it was more clear cut. Like Joey Logano was out early. Then a couple other things happened, and you already kind of knew the 4 guys that were out. I think this one, aside from Harrison Burton, and no disrespect to him, maybe he could win. But realistically, MTJ, Brad, and Denny all being below the cut line could make for some great racing, especially if they'll be up the front. Well, there's guys going to be doing desperation moves to try to advance. Let's see what Brian said in the chat. Said final run went green and NASCAR pocketed the yellow despite drivers going. Oh yeah, I do remember that from the spring
Oh
now because
yeah.
that was
Yeah.
crazy. That was actually insane.
That
The
won't.
lap traffic.
Yeah, that won't happen this time.
Yeah. So yeah, because now hopefully you guys will be prepared. All right. So now we'll do one more rapid fire here. I like that one. That was a good segment. Appreciate everyone in the chat as well. Keep it coming here. This has been a great show so far. So Phil, rapid fire question to you for Bristol. We talked about overtime already. We talked about the drivers potentially around, the playoff bubble and everything like that. Will a driver who does not have a win thus far this season win at Bristol? And I'm thinking of one specifically because most drivers, I guess there's 2 there, but yeah. What do you think?
I could probably guess who you're thinking about, but I'll say no. I'll say that it's going to be a playoff driver. I think they're going to bring it this week. And, I mean, if the books are right, it's Hamlin, right? And he's won. Mm-hmm. So I'll say no, but it would be fun to see what the odds are on something like that. This is where I wish this time of the year, I wish we could get more creative or the books could get more creative, right? Guys to make the next round. Will a playoff driver win? Guys with no wins getting a win. Like, what are the odds? Yes or no? So yeah, it's a good question. What do you think?
To me, I'm going to go, I want to go no, but just to be different, I'll say yes, because my side of the argument would be Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs could potentially, and he doesn't have a win in his career, could win at Bristol.
Fair.
I know how challenging this race is, but the fact that he was, if not one of the best, if not the best, one of the best on this tire compound over there in the spring, that was huge to me. And seeing him kind of drive up to the front, lead a bunch of laps. And also, yes, Charles, yes, Josh Berry. I don't know about John Nemechek, but Josh Berry. Him too? All right. Mm-hmm. All right. Hey, we'll take it. And I know those are going to be crazy value plays as well when we get into the outright winner segment and everything in between. So now it's the perfect time to ride or fade a couple of bets. Phil, I know you got a bunch of good ones out there. We'll also be discussing what Ryan has to offer and the guys that win the race, as well. I'll be, talking about his ride or fades here in this segment as well. And Richard saying Brad K with the walk-off. Okay, all right. We'll see if anyone's got any money on Brad. So Phil, start us off. Ride or fade. What do you got?
Well, when Ryan sent his picks over to us in the text thread today, I was pretty fired up because I had put my pod out last night, did a lot of my research and threw a lot of bets in last night. And he was on one specific concept that I was pretty heavy on. So the head-to-head matchup that I'm going to throw out there right now is William Byron over Tyler Reddick. It's on DraftKings minus 125. And this is something that Ryan threw at us. And I'll use the other one that he threw to us as a barometer here. Chase Elliott over Tyler Reddick as well is available on various books. And the book that I saw had Chase as minus 160 over Reddick. But it's my opinion that, and I use the Win the Race rankings to start. That's his website, wintherace.info. Byron is an 11 spot difference compared to Reddick. That's a huge difference on his site, like week to week. And Chase is only 7. So you're getting minus 125 on a guy who arguably is stronger than Elliott versus Tyler Reddick here. So you have to excuse me. I'm in a different location, by the way. That's why I have a background up. I know I want to be in Bristol, but my lighting is not very great here. I'm trying to read some of my stats, but this is why I think my theory of why these two are matched up and why it's closer than it should be as far as the odds, right? And we should be thankful for this. I think the sports books are pulling up the last 5 races at Bristol, seeing that the two, Reddick and Byron, have an almost even average finish and saying, okay, these two, match them up. They're pretty close, even odds almost. Okay, great, go. And while that average finish number is true, if you take the step deeper, like I know everyone here does, it's because Byron has gotten into 2 issues and finished 30th or worst, but his ceiling, his normal run, his ceiling is top 10, top 5. He's got 2 third-place finishes and a 9th. Like, that's where we're seeing the 24-car run, whereas Reddick at Bristol, he just hasn't figured out this track. He is not good here. So a normal median run for Tyler Reddick is like 14th. So if we're just going off of the median, I'm going with William Byron here. Absolutely. So yeah. And then in the next gen, the 3 most recent races, it's 2-1 Byron. Byron won, Reddick won head to head in the springtime. Byron finished 35th. So you think, all right, well, that's easy. Well, Reddick made it pretty damn interesting because he finished 30th. Like, so even when Byron is, dog shit or gets a dog shit finish, it's still a close one. So Byron has been consistently fast here for looking at the speed rankings in the next gen car at Bristol. Reddick, not. He's 24th in speed ranking at Bristol in the next gen car. So, Byron, to me, wins this hands down. I think Reddick has cause for concern. If we're talking about somebody that feels comfortable, but the race will change that, I think Reddick is that candidate. So William Byron, minus 125 over Tyler Reddick is the pick.
I love it. Hey, ride or fade, I'm riding that one too, because another thing too, like you mentioned, William Byron just stronger on these shorter tracks. We saw him win Martinsville earlier this year. Obviously different track, but hey, if they're going to bring a fast car, raw speed, unloading with a fast car at a short track, I expect nothing less from those Hendrick cars to do so. And I remember Willie B was one of the first drivers, I believe, to experience the issue of the tire, compound unraveling on him in that race. In the early stages, he spun around and, like you said, finished poorly. But with Reddick, he kind of just spun out because he didn't also take tires. I remember watching that back in the race earlier in the spring. So to me, I think that's a great point. And William Byron minus 125 there. Is there any other matchups you got in this one? There's a couple that I will. Actually, there's one that I'll mention right now. I think, this is a good one, actually. It's on BetMGM, a head-to-head matchup between Chase Elliott plus 100 and Ryan Blaney minus 130. I feel like that's a no-brainer.
That's the other one that I called out on the podcast.
Perfect.
I do not understand why Chase is a underdog in this matchup. So you called it out. I'm sure you have. Do you want to walk through that one?
Honestly, well, I'll say this, and then I think I'll let you dive into it a little bit more. Just off of first glance, Chase Elliott finishing this race in the spring in 8th place and Ryan Blaney in 16th. I mean, if I'm someone that doesn't do the further research and the further data, that to me is just an indication where I would just blindly bet that. Because Chase Elliott plus money in an instance where he's finished better against the guy he's going up against in this matchup, that sold me already. But Phil, sell me even more.
Well, let's look at the situation here with these guys. They're both secure, right? They both feel secure. They both are 30 plus points up. So that to me screams Chase Elliott, because we're not getting a head-to-head matchup here where one guy's going to be doing something different than the other guy. These guys are running normal races, and normal is right in the sweet spot here for Chase Elliott because his numbers just outduel Ryan Blaney here at Bristol easily in the last 5 races. He's at Bristol 4-1 head-to-head against Ryan Blaney. Like, it's not even close. In the next gen car, 3-0, undefeated in the next gen car at this race. He's got a 5.7 average finish in 3 races in the next gen car. His speed ranking is tied with Willie B in 12th, finished 2nd, 7th, and 8th, like 3 for 3 finishing inside the top 10. Blaney just hasn't been fast. Speed ranking is 22nd, and it's just, he's not giving you, it's kind of similar to Reddick in a way. Like, yeah, he finished the race. He had a decent car in the springtime, but where did he finish? Like mid-teens? Like, that's what we're getting from a Ryan Blaney here. And one of the other comp tracks, or I say comp, but Dover, like if you want to bring Dover in, Blaney's stats get a little stronger going back to the start of 2023. So 4 races, 2 of each. And Chase's is still better. So it's just Chase all around. And the fact that you're getting plus money here, I don't understand it. Now, I saw Big Ross saying he was really fast here in the spring. He was 8th on the speed rank charts,
did start on the pole.
Start on the pole. Was faster than Chase. Got to be honest with you. But it's just, a regression to the mean. Like, this is not a track where we've seen him consistently run up front, consistently get great finishes. And Chase has been better than him. So it's plus 100 for a guy who has been winning. Like, if the roles were reversed, maybe I could be like, well, we could take a shot on Blaney. He was a little fast in the spring, but no, it's the opposite. So I'm all over Chase at that number.
Yeah, no, and I am too. And I think the other thing that I'm thinking of is this is the Bristol Night Race, one of the longest races in terms of how much it manufactures a driver's skill level, how much, energy it takes, how much of the tires we're going to see wear. And I think, yes, Ryan Blaney had speed, started on the pole in the spring, but regardless, I'm seeing Chase Elliott for plus money in a head-to-head matchup between one other guy who, like we said, Blaney hasn't really had much luck. I mean, Atlanta ran a great race, but I would say he was unlucky to not win. Then we see Watkins Glen dead last. I think he just wants to survive this one. Where Chase, we could sort of see he just performed better over the long stretch of a run. And that's the primary reason I take them. So one last thing I want to note here, at least for me with these rider fades. So we just talked about a good one that I feel like most of us feel confident about in terms of just throwing a little bit on for plus money, at least for Chase Elliott over Ryan Blaney at plus 100. And also, like Brig Ross is saying, this matchup should be minus 115, both sides. If it was, we wouldn't necessarily be talking about it. Maybe it would just be harder to pick a side. This is the reason why I'm so locked into Chase. It is because of the plus money. So my point is, though, we talked about how much it made sense to go William Byron minus 125 over Tyler Reddick, and how much we're intrigued about Chase Elliott plus 100 over Ryan Blaney. Well, if you parlay those two, you get plus 231 to potentially, increase those odds a little bit more. I think that is something that could really wrap up our two best plays in this rider fade segment for you guys. I think those two head-to-head matchups are something that we have, the thought process behind. If you want to put them both together, plus 231 are the odds there. And to me, I think that's pretty sweet considering what we just talked about. Phil, what about you?
I like it, and I can tell you this. I won't be in Bristol this weekend, but I'm going to be in the Poconos on a golf outing. And come 7:30 Saturday night, I will have a few beverages in me, and parlays will be just flying. So this is a good one to kind of start off a little bit more stable thinking. And I'm into that. So good. You already planted the seed. Now when I'm drunk, I'm just going to be ripping and running.
And you'll be thinking of me too. So
yeah.
Perfect. All right. Awesome. Any more rider fades? Any more head-to-head matchups in this one before we move on?
I've got one, but I'll save it for later. It's not a best value, but it'll be a fun conversation for the end. So I got one more that I'll throw out there later.
Awesome. Perfect. Now we are going to move on to the position prop segment. And I've seen a lot of people in the chat asking a few questions. Continue to do so, because now I'm going to be going back up, scrolling to find some of the questions that were there, asking about some of the, drivers and where they may finish in this one, who we may be on. But now's the time. Fire away at us. We'll be answering all the questions in the chat. Top 5s, top 10s, top 3s. you name it, we got them. And first off, I think let's start with Charles here, as Charles did ask position props, Bowman and Buescher top 5. Do you like John Hunter top 10? I'll start with, and I think this is a perfect something to mention here for Bowman specifically. Ryan from wintherace.info did mention that Greg from wintherace.info put out a little article today. He said Greg had a great write-up on the Daily Downforce for a Bowman top 10. You guys, it's free to check out. So Daily Downforce, check out Greg's write-up about Alex Bowman for a top 10. That just reminded me there. So if Greg is on Alex Bowman for a top 10, I think I can get behind Bowman for a top 5 in this one. Let's check it out. Let's check out his odds here to do so. I feel like it will come with value, and with him finishing rather in the top 5 earlier this season at Bristol, like we said, he finished in 4th, plus 450 for a top 5 for a playoff driver like Alex Bowman. That's something I can get behind. Phil, what about you?
Well, I saw Greg's tweet on yesterday afternoon, and the top 10 numbers plus 220. I'm checking right now. I was pulling it up to see if on Caesars that is still the case. Now it's gassed down to 175, but that's because Greg's good at his job. So I'm in. Like that's a bet that if those two smart people are saying, yeah, Alex Bowman is worth a damn for a top 10, I'm very much interested in. Call it a NASCAR Betting Preview Show approved bet. Ryan not here. We're throwing that out there, him and Greg, and I'll tail. That's one that like I don't even have to do the research for myself. I'll believe them and go for it. Now top 5, a little bit different number. I think that's a taller task for Bowman, but I'll be more conservative with the top 10.
I will say too, I would rather go top 10 than top 5, especially with the value that it is at. I think makes more sense that way, just to get more positions there. Charles in the chat. Charles, thank you so much. Thanks to Phil and Tina for addressing these questions in the chat. Support the IBT fam. We really appreciate every single donation, anything that you guys give. So that means a lot to us. Charles, appreciate everything that you do in the chat, and keep asking questions. We'll keep responding. Phil, let's go to you now. Your favorite position prop for this weekend?
Man, there's so many. Like I feel like the board's pretty good this week. I'm really fired up for this race because I'm seeing things. So it's tough to choose. I'll go with the one that's a little bit more fun to talk about because a little longer odds, and you guys can pick me apart if you think I'm crazy here. But I was getting plus 350 for a top 10 on Michael McDowell. And as a matter of fact, on Bet 365, he was plus 400 last night. So I know that's less available than most of the other books. So Caesars had him at plus 350, and I was throwing a half a unit on it on the podcast, but he hovers around that top 10 consistently on this track. In the last 5 races at Bristol, 12.4 average finish. That's good enough for 5th in all of NASCAR in that time period. Like that's pretty crazy. We're talking about McDowell. This isn't a super speedway. This isn't Daytona. He's got 2 top 10s, 4 top 15s. And actually, to be quite frank, he's 4 out of 5 finishing in the top 11. So he just missed 2 times and hit the other 2. So it's like very, very right there for it. And Charles saying, boo McDowell, better faith. We're going to talk about John Hunter, but McDowell, this number, I like it. He was 10th in speed rating in the spring race. He's just decent. And the thing about McDowell is more recently, especially these last 2 races at Bristol, he started well. So he's good off the truck. So you should know on Friday heading into Saturday if you like him or not. Now I'm making the pick here to try to get some closing line value on McDowell, because if he goes out and puts a top 10, you're not going to see that number. We've seen that from him specifically over the past month. So I think if he can qualify, he qualifies well, that number goes away. And qualifying well at Bristol has spoken to McDowell. So I like this. He's gotten good results. And I think that this bet, if nothing else, will make the race fun for you to follow, because I think he'll be hovering around that spot. And if he cashes, that's a pretty good ticket. I need to check on what it is right now, but it was 350 on Caesars yesterday. So there's the one that I have a little bit more fun with.
I love it. And I think that's one that I didn't even think of. So I appreciate that because Michael McDowell, like you said, isn't the type of guy where you would potentially think, oh, we're going to short track, we're going to Bristol, time for McD. And then you look at those stats there. You sold me there because everything that he's able to do. And he finished 11th in this race or in the spring. Like you mentioned, only a couple finishing outside the top 10. I think that is even bigger to me because I know everyone, and their notebooks are now filled with going back to Bristol and having the opportunity to look back on the race and the tire compound and everything like that and the strategies that unfold with that. But to me, I mean, if the guy is already good here and was good with the tires, now coming back and already, I just feel like that could be an advantage. Speaking of a driver that's good on short tracks, I wouldn't be able to talk about him this whole episode without talking about him, and that's Josh Berry. Plus 375 for a top 5. I think the value could be better, but I also just love Josh Berry in this scenario. He earlier in the spring, he was like 140 to 1 to win. Something crazy like that. Maybe it was 100 to 1. Either way, it was an outlandish, crazy number, 80 to 1, something. And I took him. And Josh Berry was leading this race at some point, and I was like, oh my gosh, I may have a chance. Now, ultimately, he didn't get the finish that I feel like he deserved in 12th, but that was because of the tire fall off and everything like that. And like he was it was Hamlin, Truex, Ty Gibbs, and Josh Berry. Those are the 4 drivers I remember when I think back to this race in terms of who was able to maybe not manage the tires the best, because we saw Ty Gibbs, get taken out with like 30 to go since he wasn't able to withstand Denny Hamlin and Truex. But I just feel like if he's in position, Josh Berry could be that guy, plus 375 for top 5, to give us a strong run and to be an upset winner. We've seen it with Buescher now, right? We see it within Briscoe. So, getting into the playoffs, I think this is his best opportunity, aside from Martinsville, to get a win. In the last season with Stewart-Haas Racing, Josh Berry plus 375. There's no reason why I wouldn't want to take that in this one.
Yeah, I mean, so what was the plus 375 for what, a top 5?
For a top 5, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm invested in him already for a top 10. So
there you go.
I'm not far behind you. I'm trying to find what he's going off at. Yeah, plus 140 on Caesars. He was plus 160 on Bet 365. Those are the ones that I'm getting the best number on him for. So top 10 for all the reasons that you said. I think that he's just proven to be, I know there's no comps really, but short tracks speak to him. And you think about just their situation, they're all leaving. This is kind of, let's go out and get it done, do something special here, a special track. Why the hell not? And I agree. Berry is definitely one to watch. If you don't like anything we're saying about the bets, I'm not a huge DFS guy, but I have to imagine that he's someone that you want to watch for it. Maybe tougher if he qualifies really well, then maybe not.
Did start second.
Yeah, he started second well in the spring. So maybe if he qualifies, mid-pack, then definitely have him on your radar. So yeah, he's definitely one to watch for sure.
Awesome. One other thing I wanted to mention, this would be from Ryan's point of view, and you can find all the data there at wintherace.info. It would be for William Byron, top 10 at plus 100. Am I reading that right? I am like shocked that's even available. Maybe it may not be still. Let me look on the Action Network right now. I'll pull it up for you guys. No, okay, so I'm seeing now minus 129, so that could have potentially moved since he did send us that text earlier today. But we do know that Ryan is on William Byron scoring a top 10, and at the time it was plus 100. Now it's minus, minus some value there. But Phil, I mean, I feel like that one, even with it being, under the line that we would necessarily like for the plus money, I still feel like that is a prop bet, which we already have him finishing ahead of Tyler Reddick. That would just mean William Byron gets the top 10. Tyler Reddick finishes outside the top 10. I feel like that's something that we can parlay together with our bets in terms of that strategy to make it work.
Yeah, he's minus 110 on Caesars. He's plus 100 on Bet 365. So there is something there. And yeah, I think kind of what I was saying earlier in that head-to-head conversation. If he runs a typical race and doesn't have something wonky happen to him, like what happened in the springtime with the tires, his typical race will put him in the top 10 in this situation. So yeah, plus 100 or hovering around that mark, I could see him easily doing that. Like they should expect that. So yeah, Brian, once again, I agree.
He's with us in spirit and with the betting card that we're filling out here for Bristol. Phil, what else do you got here for some position prompts? We're on a heater so far. Let's keep it going.
Yeah, I'll just throw one more out there. I'll keep it quick. The way I put it on the podcast was death, taxes, and Kyle Larson finishing top 5 at Bristol. In the last 5 races, he's been at 4 of them, and he's 4 for 4 finishing inside the top 5. He's plus 100 on Bet365 for a top 5. That number, plus 100 for someone who's done it 100% of the time, it's too easy. I feel like I don't have to sell anyone on Kyle Larson. He's just that good. So I won't go into like too many details, but his average finish is 3.3 in that time span. Like that's just wild. So, top
especially
3
at
numbers
Bristol.
might be, like that might be something. First in driver rating going away. It's just, he's got it. So the plus money for something that he's done every time since 2020, I'll take that every day. Like 100% hit rate. I'll take it.
Yeah, no, hey, you'll take it. I'll take it. Let's take it to the bank. Love that play and call out from Kyle Larson in this one. Stevie 2 times in the chat saying KB top 5 in that Cheddar's Camaro. 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 My bad. So, anyways, though, Kyle Busch plus 275 for a top 5. Hey, I think the only thing that I'm a little scared about for Kyle Busch is just the fact that I think that hot streak he was on kind of went away after Watkins Glen. So that is something that, I would be a little bit scared about. But hey, for that value, plus 275 for a driver. I saw one of the clips on Twitter, with Kyle Busch winning, sweeping the whole weekend. And I just was like, wow, what happened to that Kyle Busch? Obviously, the RCR move and everything like that. But for him at Bristol, he has dominated this track before. I could see him finishing inside the top 5. And like I said, that Cheddar's Camaro. So appreciate that comment there, Stevie 2 times. And I could see it happening for you at plus 275 there. And Charles, thank you so much. Let's go. Let's go. Yes.
Amazing. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the donation there. And it is for the John Hunter Nemechek outright at 150 to 1. This will cover it. Hey, I'll take it. I'll take this money. I'll throw 10 on it. Phil throw 10 on it. And then we'll be walking away a little bit richer after that one. And I think that's the perfect segue too. We'll keep that up there because really do, Charles, appreciate all the comments. Appreciate you joining us every week and appreciate the donations. Anything really means a lot to us here at the NASCAR Betting Preview Show and the IBT family there. So thank you so much. And Phil, Charles couldn't have said it any better in terms of John Hunter Nemechek winning outright. But who else is on your card to win this race outright at Bristol?
Yeah, midweek this week, I'm being a little more cautious. I love a play like that. It's fun. And, he definitely has reason to think that. So that's fun to do. But I'm skeptical when you're going towards like the top of the board, who's someone to really zero in on. As you know, Tino, I typically try to cop out and go for more of a group situation, whether it's a manufacturer pick or in this case, a team pick. So I think if you're looking at something, JGR at plus 125 for a couple of units for me is the route. Toyota, when I was recording my podcast, had the best odds because JGR on Bet365 was like minus 120. Like that didn't make any sense. But if somebody from Toyota is going to win, it's going to be JGR. Reddick's not going to win. Wallace isn't going to win. Actually, I guess maybe John Hunter could get it done. But I think JGR, they're so strong here. And we even throw Truex into that mix. With tire wear, with the
desperation,
the sponsor desperation.
But
if you slice it, any metric that you're looking at here, these guys at JGR are just so good. They're the top dogs. In the spring race, 5 Toyotas finished inside the top 10. There's only 8 in the entire race. 5 of them finished inside the top 10. John Hernan was the other one. So the JGR crew just knows what they're doing. Obviously, Denny, I mean, back-to-back wins. We don't have to worry about him. He'll most likely be there. He's a good guy to have in your stable if you're doing this type of bet. But Christopher Bell, 3 for 3, top 5. First in the next-gen speed rankings. 2 top 5s in that time period. Gibbs dominating the spring, led the second most laps. JGR as a company led 383 of 500 laps in the spring. Like, that's the team that I want. Like, so not messing around here. not trying to get cute with it. JGR plus 125 for a couple units is how I'm kind of starting the foundation of the card, and then going from there. Now, I'll throw it over to you in a second, but I will say I was trying to play defense with a couple drivers, and I didn't know who to do that with, and I found myself going for another team bet. And so maybe this hits somebody in a different way, and maybe they like this better. But RFK 6-1, you get Brad and Buescher. We've seen a lot of chat about Buescher already in the chat. Both of these guys are in the mix. They're top 5 on these metrics that I'm looking at. Top 8. Win the Race has them 6 and 7. So Buescher in the next gen era is 3rd in average finish at 4.0. Brad's 7th at 8.0. Like, these guys are drivers who should have a say in what happens on Saturday night. So it's 6-1 to get both of them. You don't have to choose. If you're looking to kind of group up, maybe you don't like what we're saying about JGR, you're looking for somebody different. RFK as a group, 6-1. That's how I like to kind of start. And then after practice and qualifying, zero in on the guys who look good specifically. So, it's kind of how I'm playing the quote unquote outrights this week. Copping out, but
well, in a smart way. Yeah. No, I think your comp out there might be the best strategy to bet this race on the entire weekend. I love that there because of the guys that come with it, like you mentioned, and also the fact that it being plus money is huge because, I mean, Brian's saying it too. JGR plus 125, and he throws in the guys like Blaney, Elliott, Kez, Larson. Kez is on there too, so maybe that RFK at 6-1 is something he may be willing to take here too. But that's the biggest thing in this one is who's going to win us this race. Well, to me, on my card, who I was thinking of putting on it was Denny Hamlin and Christopher Bell. Those were definitely, like, when I was looking back at this race or just thinking about it as a whole, those 2 drivers I think are going to win this race outright. Well, it's half of JGR. Might as well throw Ty Gibbs, who could potentially need to win in a race here. Yeah. And then Martin Truex Jr. too. Look, I don't think Truex at right now, with how poorly they're performing, I don't think Truex beats any of those 3, but I'll gladly throw him in the mix to do so because he may need to. Especially thinking about this too, Phil. Man, now you're getting me fired up. 3 of those JGR guys may need to win this race. Hamlin, Truex, and Gibbs. They're all around that playoff cut line. Yeah, sure, points and everything like that. But hey, what do you do when you need to make sure you advance the next round? You just win the race. Like, that's all there is to it. All these points and everything like that. I hope it gets thrown out the window for Bristol here because that is something that I want to see. I want to see drivers being aggressive, and I think they can do so in this race. So yeah, no, love the plays there. That took away half my betting card because I was on those JGR guys.
I'll say this: Big Ross calls out a good point about the RFK bet. Buescher hasn't started better than 20th at Bristol in the last 5 races. So yeah, that's a good point. If you do like them, you can tell that they've been able to overcome some poor starts. Kozlowski has an average starting position of 8.8. So that's a little bit better. So they kind of offset each other. But recently, they both haven't been good. I think they were like 17th and obviously outside top 20. So good point there. And just got to hope the books bring that same bet back up in on Saturday and see what they re-up it as. But fair point about the qualifying effort there.
I think one thing, and Big Ross also saying, if you can get Brad at 14-1 on FanDuel still, he does like that number. I think that's a good point too. Like, if you're not comfortable with having both drivers, within the 6-1 there with Buescher and Brad, or could find more value rather with Brad, who finished 3rd in this race in the spring, that could be a way to do it. And we mentioned the playoff implications as well. I know for a fact that if Buescher is around Brad and they need points or anything like that, the 17 will do whatever it takes to make sure that the 6 gets the best out of their weekend in this one. One driver that I talked about earlier and wanted to bring up again for an outright number would be Josh Berry. It's a 35-1 long shot. I would probably get this before practice and qualifying, just based off of how they were able to qualify within the second position on the front row, everything like that. I don't think the value would change drastically with it being the 4-car, but at the same time, it'll definitely go down from 35-1 if you're starting on the front row at Bristol. To me, I'm not throwing that much on it, but I do think if I'm confident in Berry to get a top 5. Might as well throw a little bit on him to potentially play spoiler in this one. And also got to check in with the chat here. Hamlin is a bad bet for the win Saturday. Whoa. Why? Let's see. He will be leaderboard watching and won't race hard for any position at the end if he is in with 150 laps to go. Okay, so hey, good to know. Good to know. That's what Stevie 2 times thinks. I don't think he's necessarily a bad bet personally, but it's good to have these alternate opinions and, objectively thinking out there for Hamlin, because I didn't think he'd be a bad bet for Atlanta or Watkins Glen, and he was. So there we go. That could continue on. Brian saying, hope he can grab tomorrow in Nevada for sure. Worried about him qualifying better than the 17. That would be, I believe, the 6 in Brad Keselowski. And Charles is ready to hear the best values for all series, in which I will bring up your comment from before. I'm totally going to talk about Dale Jr. How could I not? I mean, Dale Jr. racing Xfinity. Let's go, Charles. So we will get there and talk about some Xfinity when we get to the best values. Phil, do you have any more outright winners in this one? Because I thought I had some more, but honestly, your strategy for this weekend may have just kind of covered it for me too.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of covered right now. Grouping some of these guys up, and we'll really dive in after practice and qualify. I mean, something to note for an outright pick: the winning driver has started inside the top 5, 6 of the last 7 races at Bristol. So if we get some of these longer guys like a Berry, who qualify up front, even though their number might drop, it's not going to drop to something that's like crazy when you consider most of the time the driver that wins the race is starting inside that top 5. So we'll see what we get after practice and qualifying.
100% there too, with Denny Hamlin starting in 3rd and winning this race in the spring. That was something I was surprised by too. But with all of the lead changes and tire strategy and guys, falling off the pace and charging up to the front, I did not realize that Denny Hamlin started that race in the 3rd position. So great point by Phil there. And that's something that I'm definitely going to keep in mind when we move forward into this weekend. And like you said too, definitely watch out for practice and qualifying. I think one thing that will definitely may matter would be the lap averages. That's something that I always look at, especially with although it will be shorter runs. I think if we do see any of that fall off as soon as 20 to 25 laps, we may be able to capitalize on which drivers are fast and who it will show us in practice. Let's see here. Brian saying, don't forget we have one full field 45-minute practice on Friday, and like Phil said, that will be huge. Glad we're all on the same page there, because practice can help us really find who's going to be fast and who's going to potentially win the race in this one. So now let's move on. If you guys have any other questions as we get into the best value segment, let us know in the chat here below. Keep up the comments. Appreciate everyone for sticking around this long. It's been an awesome show this far. So if you guys have any, could be prop plays, head-to-heads, outright winners, any of your best values in any of the series, comment down below and we'll be sure to get to it as we get to the final segment of the show here. So Phil, best values. You mentioned, I think you alluded to one being fun before. Is that one the one you'll lead with here?
The value isn't like astronomical or anything like that, but it's a fun conversation. It's a guy that Charles has been just anxious to talk about. It's John Hunter Nemechek. So his number for a top 10 is 5-1 on a lot of books. And I think that is something that is fun to play. We were talking about his outright price, and obviously that's really going to be tough for them to do, but a top 10 is doable. Yes, they did it in the springtime. So that is something that is worth it. But for me, being more conservative, he is going head to head against Austin Cindric, and they are minus 115 apiece. And I am smashing John Hunter Nemechek in that matchup. It doesn't makes sense that these two are even. Cindric, you can almost say that his points situation is working against him here because he's feeling safe. He did his job on the super speedway on the road course, and he's looking up and he's seeing a racetrack that he is just piss poor at, cannot figure it out. And, his best finish at this track in 3 starts is 20th. He's got a 32nd and a 31st. His last 2 races here, he was 5 laps down in the springtime. Meanwhile, John Hunter Nemechek was 6th in that race, a speed ranking of 7th, a driver rating of 99.2. This was not a fluke for John Hunter. It's really tough to make a huge case for any legacy car and a driver who doesn't have a lot of data to back it up. But Cindric, it's more about the Cindric situation. And this is why I like the head-to-head more than the top 10, because we could see John Hunter get, a lap down early, and it's like, oh, well, that's just typical 42 car. But in a head-to-head matchup, he's still in the ball game, especially against someone who can't stay on the fucking lead lap at this track in Austin Cindric. So John Hunter, if you consider like Dover as a comp, just the 2 tracks this year, John Hunter was 6th and 20th. Cindric has an average finish of 26.0. Like, just he is not there at this type of track. It just doesn't suit him. So 100%, this is the way to go if you're trying to play John Hunter. This is what I was referring to earlier, Charles, when I said I have a way to play John Hunter. For me, this is how I'm doing it. And if you want to throw a sprinkle on an outright or a top 10, I get it. He's shown speed. He's kind of flying below the radar. He's a guy that jumps off the page to you when you're digging into stats. But this matchup here, this seems like it's punching down for John Hunter.
Yeah, no, I have never been more locked into a John Hunter Nemechek play in my entire life, but I love it. And I think the one thing that I didn't necessarily realize was how bad Cindric is here, or on short tracks in general. Because the Xfinity Series posted a clip of him and AJ Allman there going at it. Like I said, Xfinity Series. So that was a couple years ago there when they were both crashing when they crossed the line. I was like, wow, Cindric. I do remember how much of a beast he was in that series at that time, champion. But I was like, could he have a chance? And Phil just reminded me, no. So that's awesome.
Because he's comfortable too. I think that plays a factor, right? They're not going to be pushing. They're going to be fine running 27th as long as they're still 30 points up. So that's to his detriment.
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, I'm glad we talked about the playoff picture early on, because now everything's coming full circle there with Cindric, seeing how high he is up in the standings and just wanting to finish this race. All right, so now one thing I did want to cover was some of the comments from before. Stevie 2 times coming in hot here, saying, don't be surprised if the 11 blows up on Saturday, since, hold on, may have a valid point, the grandson is only +6 from the cut line. Does JGR sabotage Denny not once from the poorly inspected engine that he got substantially fined for points wise, but now twice to make sure Ty Gibbs gets in? I think the one time of not taking apart the engine correctly was enough for Hamlin, I'd hope, but who knows? Stevie could be onto something here. If this does happen, we're going back to Stevie 2 times being right about it.
I'll have my tinfoil hat on next week for Kansas. Like that would be crazy if something like that would happen. I'd start to believe it.
100%. Charles saying in the chat, anyone sniffing out a Dean Thompson outright in trucks, +1600 there. I'm not really on trade. Phil is the truck guy though. Phil may be onto something here. I will say specifically for myself, I'm not on any truck plays for this one. Although crazy that are we having a triple header this weekend?
Triple header starts tomorrow night. I want to tell you right now. As soon as this ends tonight, Derek and I are going to be hopping on to record the Trucks podcast. We could bring up Dean Thompson, Charles, if you want to throw why you like him at 16-1. Let me know. I'd be happy to talk about that later with Derek. But I'm, definitely interested in some of these truck bets. They're only available on Caesar so far this week. Slow to drop the truck odds, even though they've been off for like a month. Couldn't get them until Wednesday afternoon. So, best bet, I'm going to put together a case for someone like a Tyler Ankrum top 5, getting like +225. I keep my eyes peeled on somebody like that.
For sure. I like that there. And tune in to Phil and Derek's Truck Prod coming out with them being back in action this weekend. That's awesome to hear and get ready for here. Brian saying, 54 is getting the best JGR engine this week. Honestly, yeah, something that I sometimes forget that he is the grandson with the last name Gibbs there. But one thing that I want to mention, as Chuck earlier on said, are we talking any Dale Earnhardt Jr.? And how can we not? Now, one thing that I did want to talk about for the Xfinity series is the odds for most of these drivers, at least the favorites in this one, to put things in perspective here. Justin Allgaier is plus 250. I mean, I like Allgaier, but I do not like that value to win a race at Bristol. Cole Custer plus 400, Chandler Smith plus 400, Creed plus 700. I could maybe see a little Sheldon Creed finally getting it done, but I say that almost every week because he's crazy value since he's never won a race. Sam Mayer plus 700. And now this is the thing that kind of scares me. Dale Earnhardt Jr. is 10-1 to win this race. Now, we're talking about a guy that does podcasts primarily for a living and not driving. This is my favorite driver of all time, so I'm never going to be like any shade there, but that's just a fact. Me and him are on the same right now. We have the best average. We have the same average finish in terms of racing this season. But in all seriousness, Dale Jr. to win this race last year was 40-1. That was awesome, and I think that was like the value that made sense for me to bet on him. And not only was he 40-1, well, he was dominating that race up until he had an issue with the car and then went on fire. So to me, at 10-1, it's kind of hard for me to get behind, except for the fact that I may bring up this could be his last race ever in the NASCAR, 3 series here. So the reason I say that is not because, I have any sources or anything like that, but what I've been hearing, on social media and everything Dale Earnhardt Jr. has said is just the fact that he hasn't had like any confirmation he will be back next year. And the guy's getting a little older too. He's mentioned that. He's mentioned that it's harder to run up front, with all those guys there racing very aggressively, which will be their regular season finale too at Bristol. So I think you need to consider that also with the Xfinity series coming, regular season coming to an end at Bristol. Dale Earnhardt Jr. up there, if he will be able to put up the same pace as he did last year, then there we go. We won't know until he steps out and drives the car. But 10-1, I don't like it. I'm still going to be betting on it because my favorite driver of all time. Didn't have an opportunity to bet on him when he was in the Cup Series because I was too young. But at the same time, Phil, do you have any thoughts on Dale Jr. there? Could you provide any objectivity to my bias?
Not really. I mean, I think the whole world would love to see him do well. So I'm not a big Xfinity bettor. I did jump on him last year when I saw the buzz from everyone talking about that number. And I can't really give you any reason why he would or wouldn't do well. Like Big Ross said, he did better than expected last year. I mean, I think it was pretty shocking, right? To see like, wow, he really is pretty good. So maybe there's a situation where like you look back and you're like, the quality of the series is just not as good as it used to be. I don't know. And he's able to just like dip down and mess around. So we'll see, but I'll rock with anybody who wants to throw something out there. I mean, if it's 10-1, it's 10-1. I would hate to not be on Dale in any sort of way and have him doing burnouts. Exactly. So, yeah.
And then he gets on the mic and he's like, Dale Jr. out, mic drop. I would cry if I didn't get that. So you put it perfectly there. Because I will have so much regret if I do not bet on Dale Earnhardt Jr. and he wins a race. So yeah, I think, and like you said too, one last point about that is like this series for the Xfinity this year. I haven't watched every single race, but I've watched enough and I'm kept up with it. I think the fact that we haven't seen a single driver necessarily dominate. Right, like it's been SVG on the road courses, Austin Hill and super speedways, JRM cars are fast, Cole Custer's fast, but like it's not really anything else. No one stands out to me to where in this point, Dale Jr. can just come down and potentially dominate. So let me know in the guys in the chat if you have any more bets for us to talk about, any questions, comments, concerns about us, and this upcoming weekend. Might be worth it to wait on Dale Jr. I think that's a great point too. He could potentially do poorly in qualifying since he's not always in that car, and then the value could go up there. So Big Ross, appreciate that there. That is a great thing to mention. I think the only thing that could potentially hurt that thought process is just the amount of fans he has, because the amount of fans he has is the most ever that I've ever seen. And then they will just keep hammering the number, and then it won't necessarily be able to move that much.
That's a fact.
But yeah, so that's what maybe he did start at 20-1 or something, and then everyone just bet on him. But Phil, where can people find you on social media, support you for this upcoming weekend? Talked about the trucks, remind them again about the pod and everything they can do to support you there.
Yeah, no, I saw Charles asking earlier. My last YouTube update was like 10 months ago. I think my New Year's resolution this coming year is going to be to get my YouTube channel kind of more solidified. But if you want to follow me, give me a follow at Full Tank Phil on X and Instagram. Definitely more active over there. And the podcast available on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts every week for the Cup Series. And yeah, like I said, we'll be doing a truck pod tonight. So trucks are back, I think, next couple weeks, and they are in the midst of their playoffs. So we'll get that under the NASCAR Betting Preview Show umbrella, and hope everyone who's going this weekend has an absolute blast. Drink one for us who won't be there, and let's win some bets this weekend.
Yes, sir. Derek, who will also be on the pod with Phil, saying good show, boys. Appreciate him for, everything he does to, help the NASCAR Betting Preview Show and us grow and continue to have this platform. And, thank you to the guys in the chat. This was an awesome time. Chat was on fire tonight for the Bristol Night Race. Super appreciate everyone out there, whether it was questions, comments, or anything funny you had to say. It all means the world to us and gives us, much more motivation to keep doing these shows for you guys and keep putting those bets in and keep trying to win and make profit each and every week. You guys can find me at Tino, PATTIGNO on social media. I'll be posting content from Watkins Glen last weekend. Had a great time there, like I mentioned earlier in the show. I'm going to be posting all the stuff that I got there, and then obviously things for Bristol this weekend too. So it's going to be a long, exciting week. Charles also going to throw some cucumbers on the track, so that's even better. You guys can also find me Front Stretch Through the Gears NASCAR Betting Podcast, and you can also hear me on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio Channel 90, where I give my best bet segment each and every week. Might be hopping on this Saturday with Pete Pistone and the boys there talking about everything we will be doing and betting on for Bristol. Appreciate everyone once again. Thank you so much for tuning in to the NASCAR Betting Preview Show, and we'll see you next week right here, same time, same people. And oh yeah, if you're at Bristol, be sure to check out the guys from wintherace.info. Ryan will be out there, and he'll be back with us, and I can't wait for him to bring home the Bristol winning sword. Hey, thanks again, everyone, and have a great night.